Good morning. Um, we're going to start on Ezekiel's wheels. Now, let me just say, I really don't know where this is going because every time I walk away from study, I get like a huge major epiphany of something that ties the greater whole together. But I can tell you three things, and I'm going to tell you ahead of time where we're going because I do want you to stay with me. It's going to be a long journey. I never just tell you without giving you a list of scriptures as long as my arms. So I'm going to tell you ahead of time, and then I hope you'll stay with me so you make it all the way through the scriptures with me and you can see what I've been shown. Ezekiel's wheels represents the system of worship of Elohim. The pattern in Ezekiel chapter 1 represents the function of the tabernacle on earth. The pattern in Ezekiel chapter 10 represents the real, the authentic in heaven, in the heavenlies. Ezekiel 1, of course, is the pattern or the shadow type of Ezekiel 10. And of this system of worship and this typology, I cannot tell you yet if it was a true spiritual assemblance of pieces like are described to us in the scripture, or if it was all a shadow type to explain something that we don't have the mind to comprehend. But I can tell you three things about it. It controlled famine and drought. It was a vehicle of judgment and blessing. And it was the absolute had unity of Elohim and the people of Elohim to him. Nothing within Ezekiel chapter 1 and Ezekiel chapter 10 functioned in an independent manner. It was all one and part of the one. There were four, but there were only one. Okay, and we're going to get into this more as we go along. And I think the best way to start is to break down Ezekiel and show you, I think I'm going to start in Ezekiel 10, and I'm going to show you the real and the wording and the pattern of what exists in the heavenlies as compared to the pattern of the wording that exists in Ezekiel chapter 1. So, yeah, it's very, very interesting, and it's been very surprising to me. I always felt that it represented the Moedim of Elohim in some manner. I've always seen it as like a big celestial timepiece with cogs. And when we get the cogs or the two wheels lined up, you know, everything like a magic trap door, everything opens and is revealed to us. And somewhat that has happened, but it's not quite it's not the cog system I perceived it to be. While it is a cog system of unity and working in harmony, it's not what I thought it was. Yeah, so let's just get started here. It says, and I looked and beheld in the firmament, just like you read about in Genesis, in the firmament that was above the head of the cherubim, there appeared over them. And when it says appeared, it's like you saw it as in it's almost like the Hebrew word mirar, to see, to observe, over them as it were a sapphire stone. Okay, so the first place we see the sapphire stone is at Sinai, when Moses went up on top of the mountain with the elders, and below their feet was the pavement of stone. In Exodus 24, and they saw the God of Israel, and that word is Elohim of Israel, and under his feet were paved work of sapphire, as it were the body at seeing the bones, the structure, the skeleton of Shemayim in his tohar, his clearness, his brightness, his purity. Okay, so this is, when you want to know about the significance of a word, you can go to the first time it shows up in the Old Testament, and from there you can learn what it correctly represents. So here we are seeing the same scene, basically, that we see in Exodus 24:10. Now, the other thing I want to show you is where this word shows up. It was here in Exodus 24:10 that Moses received the commandments. Okay, and he took the elders up with him on at that time. Now, here we're going to look for the fringe. And I want to remind you that they were to put fringe on the borders of their garments, on the extremities throughout their generations, that they should look upon the fringe of the borders with a ribband of, this says, tachelet. And unfortunately, the writer of the Strong's Concordance agreed with the unclean snail as the color of blue, which I do not. But the point here is that the blue on the ribband harkened back to Sinai, which is the color above our heads when we look up in the expanse above us. And it remembers the giving of the law on Sinai, because they were to look upon the fringe on the borders of their garment, on the extremities, and to see that blue ribbon or ribband, or that margin of blue above the fringe, that they would not go whoring and doing after the lust of their own heart. Rather, they would obey the covenant that they had established with Elohim. So that's the significance of the notes that I had made there. Now let's go back to the notes. Okay, it talks about the appearance of the likeness of a throne. And this word as the appearance of the likeness of a throne. Okay, to view the resemblance of is literally what it says, a throne. Okay, kaseh. Now this word is, this is where my heart's heavy right now. As I've already told you, the basis of what we're looking at is unity with the unity that's in heaven. The only unity that exists between us is when we come in unity with the one who sits on the circle of the earth. Outside of that, there is no unity. You can go off and keep whatever calendar you want because you want to be in unity and you don't want fighting and quarreling and bickering. I get that. The hardest thing I do every year is go out and inspect barley. I'm going to tell you, if you don't believe me, you ask my husbands and you ask my close friends. It's a crucifixion of my flesh to walk into that arena where I know swords are drawn. But that's what I'm called to do. And I'm not called to fight. I'm not called to pick up my sword. I'm called to stand really close to my Father and say what he shows me and let him fight for me. But it doesn't matter. It's not comfortable to my flesh. And this is one of the words in the calendar that is just reeking and has wreaked havoc. Kaseh, kiseh, all of the derivatives of this word, they all mean to conceal and not to reveal. Let me see if I can get. I'm sorry, I'm already blubbering before you. I can't help it. My heart is broken. Sorry about the dog in the background. My heart is broken because we're going through another time where those who are seeking the true path are being shaken and tested. At the beginning of this, because I was watching those that are so sincere and I've been close to and that are dear to me, I watched them change in midstream. I'm going to lie to you. It threw me into a tailspin. Oh, Father, don't let me be so hard-hearted that I miss you. Oh, Father, don't let me be so swayable that I can't find you. So you're going to see an overlay of this word from the parent or the root syllables, consonants, from the parent or the root consonants. And you're going to see that it means cover, withdraw from sight. So this word, kese, all of the derivatives of this word has to do with hiding. So in Numbers 15, 9:15, it's covering. And Deuteronomy 22:12, it represents a garment. In Exodus 17:16, it represents a throne or an elevated seat. In Ezekiel 13:18, it represents a band, it says. And in Leviticus 11:1, it represents an owl hiding in the woods. There is nothing about the word that means to cover with light so that it is revealed rather than being hidden. Very, very, very well aware of the verse in Psalms. Okay, but it does not mean to reveal. It does mean to conceal. And I don't do this often, but if you want to look at the Paleo-Hebrew, it shows two palms over eyes in praise. Okay, so when we approach Elohim, we can't look upon him. No man sees him and lives. And this word represents his throne. Okay, it has been concealed from our eyes because we cannot see into the heavenlies, into the throne of God. So please do not be deceived on this use of this word in Psalms. And I'm not even going to give you the reference because I don't want you to go off and chase that rabbit trail. Sooner or later, somebody's going to present it to you anyway. So where are we at? We have a picture of above the cherubims that there was the appearance of sapphire over their heads and the appearance of a throne. And he spake unto the man clothed in linen, and that word means to be wrapped in, and said, go in between the wheels. Now, in this case, the word wheels is Gilgal. We're going to be dealing with two words, Gilgal and Ophan, sorry, Gilgal and Ophan. Okay, so in this verse, and there's a reason, there's a distinct reason and a distinct purpose that each word is used when it's used. And so he spoke to the man who was wrapped in linen and said, going between the Gilgal, the wheels, which the Gilgal always rests on earth, and we'll uncover that as we go along, under the cherubim, and fill thy hands, and that means hands like this, with coals of fire from between the cherubim, and scatter them over the city. And he went in my sight. So in the language of the Hebrew, it really reads like this: go between the cherubim, which is between the Gilgalim, and fill your hands with coals from fire and scatter them over the earth. So between the Gilgalim, there was a location that had fire sorry, it's one Gilgal that has fire and coals. Go between the cherubim and take from between or the middle of the Gilgal and fill your hands with coals from the fire and scatter them over the city. Now the cherubim stood on the right side. The right is always a position of strength of the house. When the man went in, the cloud filled the inner court. Now, if I remember right, let me just check this. Now, this is also a very distinct word in both the 10th chapter and the first chapter. And unless I've indicated otherwise, in Ezekiel 10, the word for man is ish. And when I get to Ezekiel 1, unless I've indicated otherwise, the word for man is Adam, like Adam. And the cloud filled the inner court. Then the glory of the God of the Lord of Jehovah went up. It lifted high, actually, and that word is rum or ramah, I can't remember, from the cherub over, and it didn't stood. It didn't, this reads in the King James like there was movement. There was no forward, backward, sideways movement. It just lifted up over the threshold of the house. And the house was filled with the cloud, and the court was full of the brightness of Elohim's glory. And it says the sound, but in Hebrew it's kol. And the voice of the cherubim wings were heard even to the outer court, because the voice of the mighty God speaketh. So I'm taking out, when you see the strikes, I'm taking out the extra words. Okay, and ki can mean more likely it's because rather than as. So the wings of the cherubim were the voice of Almighty God speaking. And it came to pass that when he commanded the man wrapped in linen, saying, take the fire from between the Gilgal, from between the cherubim, then he went in and stood beside the Ophan. Now we have a change in word for wheels. Very interesting, and we're going to find out why. One cherubim stretched his hand from between the cherubim into the fire that was between the cherubim, and took thereof, and put in the hands of him that was wrapped in linen, who took it and went out in the direction of the man-faced cherub. So when it says, and he went out, he went in the direction of the man-faced cherub. Now, what I want to help you see here is that we're going to see that the cherub had 4 heads with 4 faces, and each of these appearances had its own wings 2, and its own hand 1. And so what I want to suggest to you is that one side of this cherubim reached in between the cherubim and handed it across to the man-faced cherub. And there appeared in the cherubim the form of a man's Adam hand under their wings. And when I looked, and behold, the 4 Ophan by the cherubim, 1 Ophan by 1 cherub, and another Ophan by another cherub. And the appearance of the Ophan was the color of beryl stone. Okay, so there's a lot of information here. What we're basically being told is that one hand of the opposite side of the man-faced, which would have been the ox, by the way. Let me see. I'm sorry. Actually, we're not told about the Ophan, what direction they're situated just in the Gilgal we are. Okay, so if we're looking at the Gilgal, opposite the man would be Lion, no, ox, would be the cherubim. Opposite the man would be the cherubim. Looking back at my notes. So this cherubim reached into the fire, grabbed the coals, and handed it across to the man. So they want us to know that there were 4 ophon by the cherubim, 1 ophon by each cherub. There were 4 ophanim by the cherubim, 1 ophon by each cherub, and another ophon by another cherub. And the appearance of the wheels was the color of beryl stone. Now, I have seen something interesting, and hopefully we'll continue to open this up. But all of the colors that represent the presence of Elohim and Yehovah are the colors of the sky at sunset in Israel. It's that burntish, orangish, polished, brassy, garnet, beryl. Oh my goodness, there are so many gemstones that are mentioned in the Bible that are this sunset orange color. Remember, the footstool of Elohim is the earth. And what are the color of his feet? Let's just go there. I'm so sorry that this is going to be probably much bigger than I intended to, but I don't like to just say, oh, this, and you should just believe me. That's not my manner at all. So let's just look so you can see. And it says, here we go, stop sharing. It said, and his feet, Revelation 2:18 says, there, unto the church of the angel in Thyatira, write these things, saith the Son of God, who hath eyes like unto a flame of fire, and his feet are like fine brass. We're going to see that this is basically an image of our Mashiach, of the Elohim. So his feet are like fine brass. Okay. And we're also going to see that that same color exists around the throne when we get there in Revelation. So this burntish, orangish, brassy, garnet, and all of these other orangish gem colors that the Bible mentions basically are the color of the footstool of Elohim. The sunsets of Israel are this beautiful color. Let me see if I can pull you up a photo. This is basically, this color here is represented in so many of the gem colors that we see associated with Elohim, the God of Israel. All right. Now, verse 10. As for their appearance, they 4 had one likeness. Okay. We are actually not speaking necessarily about a circle. A circle within a circle. Okay. We are actually not necessarily speaking about that representation. One of the things that we do as people with a Western mindset is when we hear the description or we read a story, that author, usually in the West, they're trying to bring you into a picture of what is going on. But that's not necessarily the way things function in the Middle Eastern mindset. In the Middle Eastern mindset, what they're trying to do is to tell you the purpose of what they're describing to you. So, or the functionality, not to give you the instructions to draw what they're talking about, in other words. Because if we go back to what Elohim said to Moses, he says, make it after the pattern that you saw in heaven. Well, we can't recreate exactly what exists in heaven here on this earth. So we have to have a form of what can be seen in heaven. And we have to relate it to the things that are familiar to us. So when it says that it is a wheel inside of a wheel, whoops, sorry. It really means that the wheels are in the midst of the wheel. They have the appearance of one. Just as we read, or we're going to read about, the same thing with the four creatures, which creature is a terrible word. The plural of life is hayot. And when you go to the local kibbutzim here, and you want to go to the zoo, it's called Gan Hayot, meaning an animal garden. But Hayot also means plural life. And so the readers of the King James called this the four living creatures. And I'm going to tell you, they're not the four creatures. They are just lives. The life of Elohim that has no beginning and has no end. It's the lives, the existence of the eternal God. So we're going to see a lot of things, a lot of fours in Ezekiel's vision. We're going to see that there were four creatures with four heads. There were four wheels. We're going to see that they went on their fourth or their quarter. And spoiler alert, when we go into Revelation and start comparing things, we're going to see a city that was built four square. Fours, in my understanding of it, and that's going to have to be another study, and this is the only time I'm going to tell you something and not show you through scripture, because it would be a huge, massive study the way that this one is going to be. But four represents the expanse. When you start expanding four sides and it spreads out, it's an expanse that can cover eternity. And I believe when we look at the four cherubim, who each have four heads, who have four wheels, who have four hands, okay, we are dealing with the expanse of Elohim. In fact, it's set in the firmament, which is an expanse, which you can't see the beginning of and which you can't see the end of. So all of this is dealing with the eternalness, the hayot, the lives, the eternalness, that wheel, that Ophan, who has no beginning and he has no end. He is eternal, who was, who is to come. All of this is dealing with that aspect of the Elohim that we are so privileged to just grasp glimpses of and serve in our broken inadequateness. Okay, so just like the four creatures have these four heads, but they have the appearance of one man, these four wheels have the appearance of one wheel, as if they are inside the other wheel. It says, and when they went up on their quarters. They turned not as they went. But they went to the place whither the head looked, they followed it, and they turned not. So we get a picture painted in our mind of this thing, and maybe the man-faced head is going, and the whole thing is going like this in this direction. Yeah, it is. But it's a greater picture than that. It's a picture of unity. It's a picture of oneness. It's a picture of, what does they say? Don't turn to the left or to the right. It's a picture of following that pillar of fire and that cloud. We'll get there, but that's what it's a picture of. And their whole body, the flesh, that is, okay, this is not the word goof or gava. This is the word basar, and their whole flesh, and their back, their gav, and their hand, their yadim, and their wings, the ophanim, and the wheels, the ophanim, were full of eyes round. And that word is sabib, and that means that it was encompassed around. And we're going to get to these words that are double bet at the end of their parent word at a later lesson. But this is very significant. So that all around this, the lives of Elohim, the eternal life of Elohim, was full of anaim. And that word anaim can mean to see, or it can mean colors. Okay, full of ice, and they rotate to the four wheels. Okay, let me go back up here to that below. It is what I transliterated from the Hebrew up here. But full of eyes, about even the ophanim that they four had. So literally what this says, the whole flesh of them, the back, the wings, the hands, the wheels, full of eyes, they, the back, the wings, the flesh, the wheels, rotate, the back, the flesh, the wings, the eyes, rotate to the four wheels. A little bit different than the King James wrote it. As for the Ophan, it cried unto them in my hearing, O Gilgal. I'm going to open this up to you later, but I'm not going to leave here without telling you. The Ophan is the worship center in the heavenlies. The Gilgal is the worship center that was established with the tabernacle. So the worship center, the throne of Elohim, is calling down to the worship center on earth, O Gilgal, and the pronouncement of judgment. And the ophanim of them called Gilgal in my ears. Ezekiel 10:14, and everyone had four faces. There's a difference. In the ophanim, the first face was the face of a cherub, a messenger. The second face was the face of a man. The third face was the face of a lion. And the fourth face was the face of an eagle. So what is missing in our illustration of the Ophan in the heavenlies above the expanse of our head is there is an ox rather than a cherubim or a cherub. There's an ox. And it says, and every one had four faces. So every one of the four faces had four faces. And the creatures were lifted up. This is the lives that I saw by the river Chibar. Okay, and Chibar is a very important word. And again, I'll pop this up on your screen. Hebar, empower to remove, having power, sifting, winnowing, being abundant and plentiful, a woven cover, a pillow covered with wool, already, heretofore, previously, a mouse or rodent that hides. Okay. So this is a picture of the worship center in Revelation. Now, we're going to show you that in, let's keep going. That's not all of it. Okay, and I'm going to jump to Ezekiel 11 here on the screen. In eSword, I should say, so that we can see why this is so important. It says, now he's going to the eastern gate after this picture of the cherubim of the center of worship in heaven. He's going to the eastern gate of the temple, and he says, he brought me into the eastern gate. Let me get rid of this in the, you go here, and I want to shrink me. And the Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the eastern gate of the house of the Lord, which looked eastward. And behold, the door of the gate, 25 men. And then it goes on about these men are men that devise mischief and wicked counsel. And we're going to go further down. And it says that he's pronouncing judgment on these men. Let's see. I was looking for a specific verse. And the Spirit of the Lord fell upon me and said unto me, speak, thus saith the Lord. Thus have you said, O house of Israel, for I know the things that come into your mind, every one of them. You have multiplied your slain in the city, as in you have filled the streets thereof with the slain. Therefore saith the Lord, your slain, whom you have laid in the midst of it, they are the flesh, and this city is the cauldron, but I will bring you forth out of the midst of it. You have feared the sword, and I will bring sword upon you, saith the Lord. I will bring you out of the midst thereof and deliver you into the hands of strangers, and I will execute judgments among you. And you will fall by the sword, and I will judge you in the borders of Israel, that you will know that I am the Lord your God. I'm going to try to make the production of the video as smooth as I can. The first time that I present something, I hardly ever have a very clear roadmap of how I'm going to say things or to put it together. More it's, I've got to feel my way through it. That's my manner and my method. I'm not one to write a script down and rehearse it and get it perfect before I present it to you. Because a lot of times as I present something, I get more revelation as I'm talking. Elohim I'll say something and he'll bring another scripture into my memory. And then rather than, anyway, it's just, that's the way it works with me, and I apologize. And I'm going to try to make this video as smooth for you as possible. Please do try to stay with me. And Father, I just pray that you help me make this video as smooth as possible, and that you help connect all the dots that you've shown me. In Yeshua's name, amen. Ezekiel 10:16. And when the cherubim walked, the wheels walked and walked by them. Etzel, etzli, it's with me. So the wheels were with the cherubim, so that when the cherubim walked or went, the wheels walked or went. And when the cherubim nasa, they lifted up their wings to mount up, to be high from the earth. The same wheels, Ophan, also did not turn, did not sabab, but they were beside them. They were with them. They were etzel. When they stood, the cherubim, the Ophan stood. And when they were lifted, the cherubim, these lifted themselves also. For the spirit of the Chayot, the lives, was in the Ophim, or the Ophan. Opham. Remember, the appearance of the many wheels was as one. The appearance of the four cherubim was as one. This functioning center of worship is one. It is ahad. It's not bifurcated. It each had a specific representation and a specific function. But to function independently, it simply could not. Then the glory of Elohim departed, it exited from off the threshold of the house and stood over the cherubim. It did a mod over the cherubim. And the cherubim lifted up their wings and mounted up Nasa from the earth from my sight. When they went out, the wheels were also behind them. Etzel, they were with them. And every one stood at the door east or in front of the gate of Jehovah's house. And the glory of the God of Israel was above them. This was as his throne. This is Chayot, not the living creature. This is the lives, the eternalness that I saw under the God of Israel by the river Chebar. And I knew that they were cherubim. And every one had four faces apiece. Every one 4 wings, and the likeness of the hands of Adam under their wings. So each of the 4 had 4 faces, 16 faces. And the likeness of their faces was the same face which I saw by the river Chebar. Their appearance and themselves, every one went straight forward, a man forward to cross over the face. So this is again that picture of not turning to the left or the right. So chapter 10 and chapter 11. Chapter 10 deals with the Ophim in the expanse above the earth, in the heavenlies. Chapter 11 talks about the sins of Israel and the pronouncement of judgment. Now, before we go to chapter 1, I want to show you what the same book of Ezekiel tells us. It tells us that Israel was beautiful because of the comeliness of Elohim that he had placed on them. This is why we see the pattern on earth of what exists in heaven, because they were to take on the form and the worship of Elohim and represent him. And by doing so, they were to have the comeliness of him in their lives. Let's go to Ezekiel 16, one of my favorite explanations. I'm going to put a link in the comments now so that you can watch a previous video I did. It's called, I believe, Colossians 2:14. What's it all about is the title, but look for the link in the description box below. This will make more sense to you if you watch that. But you will see that all of our beauty comes from the one who's beautiful. There's no beauty in us. And we're going to read that in Ezekiel. Again, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, cause Jerusalem to know her abominations, and say, Thus saith the Lord God unto Jerusalem, thy birth and thy nativity in the land of Canaan. Thy father was an Amorite, thy mother a Hittite. As for thy nativity, in the day thou wast born, thy navel was not cut. Thou wast not washed in water to supple thee. Thou wast not salted or swaddled at all. None I pitied thee to do any of these unto thee, to have compassion upon thee. But thou wast, oh, did I even screen share, peeps? Oy vavoy. Screen share, right? Sorry. Okay. So pause the video if you need to catch up with me, or if you trust me, let's continue. I'm sorry. None I pitied thee that do these things unto thee, to have compassion upon thee. But thou wast cast out in the open field to the loathing of thy person in the day thou wast born. And when I passed by thee and saw thee polluted in thy own blood, I said unto thee, when thou wast in thy blood, live. Hi. Yea, I said unto thee, when thou wast in thy blood, live. And I have caused thee to multiply as the bud of the field. The bud of the field comes in the first month. Every covenant ever offered from Elohim to humankind was in the first month, including the death of the Messiah. No greater love hath a man than to lay down his life for his brethren. And thou hast increased and waxen great, and thou art come to excellent ornaments. Thy breasts were fashioned, thy hair is grown, whereas thou wast naked and bare. Now when I passed by thee and looked upon thee, behold, it was thy time of love. The first month of the year is the time of love and life. Isaac was conceived in the time of life, and in the time of life I will be back to you, and Sarah will have a son. And I caused thee to multiply as the bud of the field, and thou hast increased and waxed great, and thou art come into excellent ornaments. Thy breasts were fashioned, thy hair is grown, whereas thou wert naked and bare. And when I passed by thee and looked upon thee, thy time was the time of love. And I spread my skirt, my extremity, where the kanaf of the fringe and the ribband of blue was, where Boaz was, where Ruth covered herself with Boaz's skirt. An act of covenant love. You don't uncover your father's skirt, for that is his nakedness, that act of covenant between a man and wife. And I spread my skirt over thee and covered thy nakedness, and I swore unto thee and entered into the covenant with thee. And the Lord said, and thou becamest mine. Then I washed thee with water, yea, washed away thy blood from thee, and I anointed with thee with oil. And now it's going to talk about putting on his beauty. And I clothe thee. What happens with the woman of the man of war? He takes off her slave clothes, and he puts new clothes on her. And I clothe thee also with the embroidered work, and shod thee with badger skin. This is a picture of the tabernacle. And I girded thee with fine linen, and covered thee with silk, and I decked thee with ornaments, and I put bracelets upon thy hand, and a chain upon thy neck, and I put a jewel on thy forehead. It says it's a nose ring, and earrings, and I think that was a nose ring, and earrings in thy ears, and a beautiful crown upon thy head. And thou wast decked with gold and silver, and thy raiment was of fine linen and silk and embroidered work. And thou did eatest the finest flour and honey, the date syrup and oil. And thou wast exceedingly beautiful, and thou did prosper unto the kingdom. And thou renown went forth among the heathen for thy beauty, for it was perfect through my comeliness, which I put upon thee, saith the Lord. And then he talks about her harlotry and how he was taking these things from her. So Ezekiel 10 is the comeliness of the life of Elohim, of the worship center in heaven. Whereas Ezekiel 1, we're going to see, is the worship center on earth, where we took on his comeliness by the covenant he gave us through Moses, at Sinai, up on that blue pavement on top of the mountain, that sapphire pavement, that now we're going to see in Ezekiel 1 in the expanse over the head. Okay, so to finish off this recording, because I have a feeling there's going to be at least one more and maybe probably a third, I want to show you the Gilgal that is being spoken about in Ezekiel. This project has been worked on for a lot of years, but it's only really gaining public knowledge because there's been recently a book released, and the book is called The Footsteps of God. And I want you to see that this is a right sandal footprint. And I'll put the video in the description box below of the first video I did on this right sandal footprint and the pattern that it makes up in understanding when to begin the month. But what is significant about this to what we're talking about in Ezekiel is this is a location of the tabernacle. Every location where the Israelites set the tabernacle up before they built the temple was constructed in a right sandal foot shape, and every one of them was called Gilgal. Gilgal, Gagalim share the same root word, which also shares the root with Golgotha. So this is not just some word that has little significance. The significance, it actually has rich significance. So we just read about the comeliness of Elohim, the eternal life, the greatness and the expanse of who he is in Ezekiel chapter 10. And then we read about how Elohim put that comeliness on us and clothed us. And that clothing looked exactly like the description of the tabernacle. This is a resting place, one of 6, resting place. 6, the number of men, the man face, right? This is the resting place, the Gilgal of the tabernacle that Ezekiel's talking about, the Gagalim, the wheels. So we'll go into this a little bit more in detail, but I wanted to show you this, and I'll bring a few pictures on the screen. I'll show you here. The footprint, if you can see, and I'll show you in a bigger picture, had a processional path. So this wheel was full of eyes. And I want to just stop and talk to you a little bit about the symbolism in this moment. I'm sure your mind is being blown. But when we talk about the wings being full of eyes, we know that not only does it mean a color, but it also can mean anaim, shnei anaim. I have 2 eyes. Okay. So if we can understand the layers of what's being said here, if the wings of the kanaf, even of the eagle later in Ezekiel, and maybe I'll go there next, the wings were full of anaim. If we look at each other's eyes, they are all a slightly different color. He said, I carried you on eagle's wings, and the wings are full of eyes of many colors. Okay, so in this processional path here on your screen is where the men would walk. we have the three commands to travel up to Jerusalem to the men were called Shlosh Regalim. And it's only been recently we understand the significance of what's been handed down, that they were the three walkings, and that we were circling in the wilderness the tabernacle as in this processional path you see in front of you. Now I'm going to change the photo. Just a minute. And we'll get the other one up for you. Okay, so here's an aerial view of the first Gilgal. The first Gilgal is when they crossed the Jordan River with Joshua, and they camped just right up the road here from me. This beautiful footprint is just less than an hour from my house, about an hour probably, not much more than that. And this is called Gilgal. And if I were to try to blow this up, I'm not going to be able to do that. Let me stop sharing it here. And let me try to share it from a different location. If I can. Documents. Downloads. Now I think I can share it. Okay, so if we blow this up, you can see the processional path all around the foot. So they were wheels inside of wheels that had the appearance of one wheel.